Well, hello, everybody. I am excited about the upcoming Lancaster Symphony performances on October 11, 12, and 13. Actually, there are 4 total performances of this program called Mozart's Twin Titans, featuring his Requiem Mass along with his Symphony No. 40 in G minor. It's a wonderful program that you will not want to miss. Unfortunately, I have to miss it, but we have a wonderful guest conductor named Robert Franz who's going to be there in my place, and I still wanted to share some thoughts with you about the program. Now, this symphony that we're starting the program with, well, first of all, I should say the shirt, right? You're distracted by the shirt, no doubt, right? So this is my new look here for a little while, and I tried some other shirts that were, how should we say, more serious looking, but it was too drab. So I went with this, not very Mozart, but we're just going to have to go with it. Where was I? Oh, yes, symphonies. The symphony that we open with is one of only 2. So he wrote 41 symphonies, did Mozart. Only 2 out of 41 are in a minor key. They're both in G minor, as a matter of fact. So that tells me something. It tells me that when he chose to write in a minor key, it was, well, an unusual thing for him to do. It was something special, let's say. And a lot of times, when we think of music that is in a minor key, we think of music that is maybe sad or frightening, something like that. Neither of those adjectives really applies to his Symphony No. 40, I don't think. Rather, it's kind of turbulent, a little bit agitated. The very beginning of the piece begins with a kind of murmuring accompaniment. There's really no introduction at all. It's as if we kind of dive right into the piece as we're joining it already in progress somehow. So we hear the violas that playing something like this, in G minor. And then on top of that, the violins play. So they have this little neighbor tone thing. And then a leap, which is probably familiar to you, that tune. That's basically the idea of the entire first movement. The second movement is more lyrical. The third movement, of course, is a minuet, which is the standard for a Mozart or Haydn or even early Beethoven symphony, for that matter. But it's not a graceful minuet. It's a minuet in a minor key, of course, and it has a kind of rustic heaviness to it. And it rather than being 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, it uses what we call hymnal. So it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3. The accents falling in unusual places, which just makes it feel not at all the stately kind of fancy dance that a minuet often was, but rather something, as I said, a lot more kind of rustic and almost visceral somehow. The last movement consists of a theme that is made up of 2 different ideas. One is a kind of what we call a rocket theme that goes from the something low to something high rather quickly. And it does that softly. And then it has this sort of more aggressive neighbor tone thing. So that's the idea. And then that other contrasting idea that are together the main theme of the last movement. So it's a piece that I think you've probably heard, and even if you haven't, you will love it. It is really an amazing piece. It's a piece that he wrote along with his Symphony number 39 and number 41, the last 3 symphonies that he wrote. He did this all in like a space of less than 6 weeks, about like 5.5 weeks. He wrote these 3 symphonies, these 3 masterpieces. It's just absolutely incredible to think how he could do something like that. But then, of course, we consider something like the Requiem, which is essentially the last piece that he ever wrote. In fact, he didn't quite finish writing it. So this came about at a time when he was in the middle of so many other things. But he was approached by you may know the story. It's not exactly what we remember from the Amadeus film or the play by Peter Schaffer, if you know the play. It's not quite as dramatic as that, but it was dramatic. So he was approached by an emissary, a person who was representing the commissioning agent, as it were. In other words, there was somebody who wanted to commission Mozart to write a Requiem Mass, but he wanted to maintain his anonymity. He didn't want Mozart to know who he was. And so he offered Mozart half of the money up front, and he would pay him the remaining half upon completion. Now, Mozart always needed money, so he took the commission. And what we know now is that the person who was commissioning it was an Austrian count who kind of made a habit of doing this sort of thing, commissioning professional composers to write music and then passing it off as his own. He probably intended to do this and as a requiem mass for his wife who had died earlier in the year. But Mozart took this on at a time when he had so much else going on. He was writing, what was it? Oh yeah, he was finishing up Magic Flute, right? And then along came this quick commission for another opera, an opera seria, serious opera, called La Clemenza di Tito, which he dispatched in like 18 days. Just mind-boggling. At the same time, I think he was actually also working on helping with like a remounting of a production of Don Giovanni. At the same, I mean, it's amazing to think about this. And he's trying to write this Requiem, and he's ill. All these things happen, and no wonder he's ill, right? He's got so much going on that he probably just the stress of it all probably contributed to to his illness. So what do we have in the Requiem Mass? We have a lot of minor key stuff, which should not be surprising because the nature of the Requiem Mass is one of elegy, it's one of remembrance, and frankly, in the case of a lot of the middle part of the text, it's about fire and brimstone. It's about day of judgment, day of wrath. So there are parts of the Requiem Mass that are the same things that you would find in a daily Mass. There's a Kyrie, there's a Sanctus, an Agnus Dei, and so on. But it opens with what's called the introit, right? Which is where we get the name Requiem. Requiem aeternam dona eis Domine. Eternal rest grant them, O Lord. And then comes the most distinctive part of the Requiem Mass, which is what's called the sequence. It's part of the liturgy, which is begins with the words Dies Irae, which is day of wrath, day of judgment. And this is the part of he sets this very long liturgical text as kind of mini cantata in about 6 or 7 different movements, I guess. And we have everything from lament and the idea of kind of these half-tone, half-step neighbor tones that suggest maybe tears or weeping, to, as I said, fire and brimstone, things where you almost can see the fires of hell right in front of you. Terrifying stuff. Now, Mozart did not end up completing this work. He died before he was able to do it all. And it's unclear exactly how much of it is his. It was completed, we know, by a student of his named Zusmer. And Constanze, his then widow, very much needed the money and wanted to have the work completed so that she could collect the remaining 50% of the commission. So she had Zusmer complete the work. And, there are stories that, Mozart in his last days was kind of, explaining the plan to Constanze and Zusmer and maybe some other people as well as to how he wanted the piece to be completed. Hard to say. But it's great music no matter what you think of it. In fact, Beethoven said something like, well, if Mozart didn't write it, at least the man who wrote it was a Mozart, or must have been a Mozart, something to that effect. Anyway, much of it, of course, is Mozart. And what's interesting about it is that so much of it kind of almost, what's the word, presages, or it kind of foreshadows the really kind of personal, romantic expression that we associate with music by composers like Beethoven, or Weber, for example. And we hear that, it was clear that this was really personal stuff. He was really feeling it as he was writing this stuff. And that kind of personal expression exists right alongside parts of the Mass that are very much from the sacred choral tradition. Fugues, for example, really impressive fugues at the beginning, the Kyrie fugue, and then at the very end, Cum Sancte Spiritu, a fugue that basically mirrors the fugue at the end of the piece that essentially mirrors the fugue at the beginning of the piece, which is a kind of nice bookended way to write a Requiem Mass, which is after all about from dust thou art and to dust thou shalt return. Brahms does it. The same kind of compositional technique in his Requiem. Very, very different piece, of course, but same basic architectural approach to it nonetheless. Anyway, great music from beginning to end. Our wonderful Lancaster Symphony Chorus will be on hand. We have a terrific quartet of soloists are going to be joining us. I mentioned Robert Franz on the podium, not to be missed. So I really, really hope you will enjoy this program. And I look forward to being back with you in person in the very near future. Thanks so much.